Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our scholarly examination of War Against Crime. We're up to number 9, and once again, a beautiful Johnny Craig cover. This is kind of interesting because it illustrates this story that's not really in the comic. There is a story about, rigged boxing, but not necessarily these characters. Really nice stuff. The first story is called The Fatal Turn, and it's, once again, we get the lead story drawn by Al Feldstein. Look at this really interesting way to start the comic, completely wordless. It's pretty rare in comics back then. We see this guy, he's driving on a mountain road, and he sees this car coming right at him, the headlights. And basically the guy's not turning, and so he swerves to avoid the car and ends up dying. His car crashes down this mountainside. We find out this is a true investigation story by Lee Maxwell, special investigator for the Consolidated Mutual Insurance Company. Of course, all the names have been changed to protect the innocent. So this is interesting. It's almost like, once again, War Against Crime is trying to maybe create a regular character. I don't know if we'll ever see Lee Maxwell again. Kind of doubt it, but I don't know. Maybe we'll find out soon in the next few weeks. Really nice Feldstein art. Very sedate Feldstein art. It's not his like full-on wonky Basil Wolvertine-like style. So basically, this guy Lee is the narrator, and his assistant Baker comes in, and I guess there's something fishy about this accident because this guy was the brother-in-law to this guy named Conlon, who owns a hotel up in that mountain. And about 2 years ago, a similar accident occurred to his wife, and he collected the insurance. Same exact spot. And now another accident where he gets to collect the insurance. I guess he had insurance claim on his brother-in-law. So they're going to investigate him. Baker offers to do it on his own time. He really wants to get to the bottom of this. So he, late at night, he calls up Lee. And he says, hey, I'm going to drive up there. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And he's like, Baker, don't be a fool. This is dangerous. But Baker hangs up. So Baker drives up the mountainside, and the same exact thing happens at the same spot. Sees these approaching headlights. They're not moving, so he crashes down the mountain too. So now it's personal. Lee's going to figure out what the hell's going on here. We see Conlon there. Conlon is kind of arguing with the police. If you close down this road, people won't be able to come to my hotel. Why don't you install lamps on those poles? So this is where all the accidents happen, the sharp turn in the road. Leah goes down the mountain and talks to this farmer who's not far from the scene. And he tells Lee he only heard one car. He was up late, and Lee can't stop chewing on this fact in his brain. He's like, one car, what the hell? So he drives up to the spot again, and he realizes that the rope that is kind of like a barrier to keep people from crashing, falling off the road. It's been sawed through with a hacksaw. It didn't just break. It's obviously a person cut this rope. So he calls the state patrol and says, guys, you gotta get that piece of rope and, for examination. Something's fishy about that. So Lee calls up Conlon, and it's pretty late. He's like, this is a strange time to call. So he says, oh, it's about that $30,000 we owe you. I thought you'd be interested. And he's like, oh, yeah, come on up. So when he gets up there, he basically says, actually, we're going to have to postpone that payment because there's some fishy business with that accident site. And basically then he just shows his hand. And he says, I'm on to you, Conlon. 3 deaths, way too coincidental. I'll get you. So Conlon says, get out. So Lee drives home, and the whole night he's just sitting there trying to piece together in his head what the hell could be going on. Something doesn't fit. He can't get it out of his head. And then he gets a call late at night from Conlon. He says, there's something I got to show you. You got to come over. And he says, no, this will prove I'm innocent. So, of course, Lee smells a rat. So he brings his gun up with him. And he calls Conlon a couple times. No answer. Conlon just said he was going to be waiting for him at his house. So he's like, this is back before cell phones. So he's like, okay, this is weird. He must be waiting for me. Maybe he'll force me off the road with his car. So he approaches that spot. And he's like, yeah, I should see that sign any minute, the sign for Conlon's Hotel. And then he sees the headlights, and they're getting closer. And finally, all of the things that have been bothering him, he kind of figures it out, and he just stops his car about where he thinks the sign would be. And the headlights blink off, and he's right in front of that sign. So he figured it out. And then all of a sudden a shot rings out and almost hits Lee. It's Conlon. And Conlon is firing at him. And Lee shoots back and hits him and injures him. So when the inspectors show up, he shows them what he figured out. See the 2 O's in Conlon? They're actually camera-like apertures that are first small, so it looks like the headlights are in the distance, and then they get bigger and bigger, so it looks like the car's approaching you. These guys will never learn that they can't defeat the forces of law and order. Almost every panel has to end like that in every story. A little homily about crime and law. I thought this one was pretty clever, pretty fun idea. Compared to a lot of the ones we read where the stories just fizzle out with no twist or anything, and you're just like, oh, okay. But this one, at least, it's getting closer to the EC model that we know and love. We got one of their one-page short stories. And then this next one is called Homicide, case number 549. Murder in the first degree. Actually, I think maybe this is another, hopefully, a series that was going to be called Homicide, because there are these 3 characters that it almost seems like they're setting them up for a regular series. And here's our heroes. We meet these guys, the lieutenant and his 2 young detectives. And this guy seems like he's almost like the wise old sage police officer. And these kids are just they can't figure out the way his brain works. He's good at this. And they're basically his apprentices. So I guess there's a murder in the 60s of Manhattan. It's some guy named Sammy Branch. I guess he's a gambler. And I want to point out right off the bat, this guy, John Alton, drew this. And, it's not too flashy. But as I was reading it, I realized, God, my eyeballs love looking at this comic. And I realized, this guy is so good at storytelling. Every panel is so beautifully composed, always from a different, interesting angle. So keep note of that as we read this. I gotta say, this guy's so good at... I know it sounds weird, but a lot of guys just don't do that. They're good artists, and they draw really cool stuff. But this guy is kind of a master. I like this guy who runs the apartment building or the hotel. He kind of looks like the Penguin, but very cartoonily drawn. So they go to Sammy's apartment. They look at the body. They find some clues. They find this note. General Sherman in main event, 10 p.m. Friday. And they think it's about this military exposition that's going to be somewhere in the park or something. I guess they're going to show off tanks and stuff. And of course, You know, the lieutenant is like the sensei. He's like smart as Columbo. He's finding all these clues, and his young acolytes are just like, oh, wow, how'd you figure that out, boss? So Mrs. Branch comes home. She's a showgirl. And, of course, she's devastated, but she does give them a little help with a clue. So one of the young detectives, Jerry, I guess he's doing some legwork, and he figures it out. It's that note wasn't talking about that military exposition of tanks. It's referring to a fight. Because I guess a tanker, that's also a slang for a prize fighter in a fixed bout. The one who's going to, you know, take the fall. So he goes to the boxing gym. He sees the first guy in the bout. And he knows that this guy's been a square shooter. He's kept his nose clean. Really doubtful that he's the, you know, the crooked boxer who's going to take a fall. His name's Gunner. I like this guy's face. It's like, you know, they say that pet owners start looking like their pets. This guy's must have droopy dog for a pet. He wants a droopy dog that look on his face. There's a lot of faces in here that are really fun. Even the lieutenant has a really interesting face. I didn't point this out when you first meet him. I don't know why. It's just very interesting. But then there's the other fighter in this main event is Buddy Vanek. And he has already been in trouble. He's kind of fishy. So he says, oh, that's probably the guy. So he goes to the locker room. I like the way he draws Buddy. Kind of like Steve Ditko face. But I love his chest hair. It's just crazy looking. And he basically just throws it all out there. He says, you're under arrest, Vanek. I know that you killed Sammy Brand this morning in his apartment. He doesn't pussyfoot around. And so Buddy's not having it. Buddy throws a stool at him, starts attacking him. And then he grabs a gun. And he starts firing at Jerry. All just really just pulls your eye across the page. These great, well-composed panels. So Jerry's chasing him on the rooftops. He's counting the bullets and waiting for Buddy to run out. He does, throws his gun at Jerry. And then just starts beating him up with his fists, which isn't a good thing for Jerry because he's a professional boxer. Buddy slips up and he takes a swing at Jerry and miscalculates and falls off the roof to his death. So then later that afternoon, our three heroes are back hanging out at the homicide headquarters, and the lieutenant's congratulating Jerry for his good work. Hey, these guys, like I could totally see these guys being characters. They kind of have this bonhomie between them. It probably would have been a pretty interesting like TV show or a comic series, like a typical 70s cop show. They joke around a little, have a little banter, you know, that kind of stuff. Here we got the letter pages. And then look at this. This is really nice. So Johnny Craig has come back to the interiors. I don't know why he's not doing the lead anymore. But this is once again trying to make a recurring character, I think. Scott Edwards, Treasury Agent. He even gets his own nice little logo there. And this is very interesting. Well, God, look at the splash, how great that is. This is the Johnny Craig that, you know, made Johnny Craig's name. When he did all these kind of interesting designy splash pages and stuff. That's really nice. But also very different. I don't know if any other Easy Comic ever did this. Using this machine font. Different than the normal one they use, which is here. I gotta say, I almost always prefer hand lettering. But I kind of like this font for a true crime type story. You know, where they're just giving you the facts and pulled from police reports. So, really nice page. God, I just had a thought that, like, maybe Scott Edwards and that first guy, Lee, whatever his name was, maybe they could team up with Choo Choo Jones in a story. There could be a whole cohesive EC-verse. That lieutenant and his 3 buddies. That's a great idea. Just kidding. That would be very dumb. I just mainly want a return of Choo Choo Jones. So we meet Edwards, and I guess he just got out of the hospital, and he's going to recount how he solved the latest case to his chief, George Garland. So I guess he was in San Francisco. He was checking out a rumor that this Hotel Sanford might be a base of operations for narcotics rings. He checked into an apartment, and he hears a scream. Runs into the next room. There's an unconscious woman and this other woman who's conscious, and turns out she's a reporter. And this woman ends up dying. And the doctor comes in. There's like a hotel doctor. And he says, this woman died of a heart attack. And the reporter lady says, that's impossible. She was an all-around athlete. And he says, my dear young lady, it was a heart attack. Man, I love the way he draws her here. That is some nice stuff. So I guess the police question him. Of course, the whole time, Edwards has got to pretend like he's not a treasury agent. He doesn't want the cops to know that he's not just some civilian. It might queer the case. So he decides to sneak in a room. He gets out on the ledge and goes in through the window. But then he trips and falls. So the guards outside, because the police set up some guards in case the murderer came back to the scene of the crime, and he puts him under arrest. So once again, he's got to explain to the police what the hell he was doing in there without revealing that he's a treasury agent. And he succeeds once again. Then these 2 goons show up and say, you Scott Edwards, you're coming with us, buddy. But the reporter happens to be driving around and sees this happen, sees these guys hustle Scott Edwards into a car. He starts fighting them in the back seat, but they knock him out with a blackjack. Oh, and they kick him. They just pound him repeatedly. It seems like the blackjack would have been enough. But then, even though he's like half conscious, he opens the door handle and jumps out of the car, or basically just falls out of the car, right over this ravine. We see that the reporter is following them the whole time. So he wakes up hours later. He's back in his hotel room. Through the haze, he can see Enid, the reporter, and Dr. Kane, the hotel doctor. I guess she found Edwards and drove him back to the hotel because she was following them. And Edwards accuses him of being the head of the narcotics ring. And he doesn't deny it. Picks up a vase and conks Edwards on the head. Then he pulls out a gun, and he basically says, I'm going to pump him up with enough drugs to kill 2 men. And then I'll go back to my room, and when people find him, I'll return to my regular duties and declare it a heart attack. He's got a very good scam going. He takes the girl with him. He takes Enid with him. He's like, you know too much. So Edwards wakes up, even though he should be dead, and somehow, groggily, gets in a taxi. He knows where the doctor lives. And then finds the house, jumps in through the window, beats the crap out of all the goons, and knocks out the doctor. Look at this great fight choreography here. That is some really fun stuff. Excellent. And then he passes out. He woke in the hospital, and Enid was there waiting for him. And the local police officers fill him in on, what happened to Kane. He's in jail. He's probably going to get the death penalty. And we come back to the present where he's talking to his superior, and he says, "Whatever happened to that blonde reporter?" He says, "Enid, I brought her back here to Washoe with me. We're going to be married soon." So who knows? Maybe that would have been a fun little continuing comic to Scott Edwards and his plucky reporter wife, Enid. That could have been almost like the Thin Man books. We have another short story, Tough as Nails. And that's it for this issue. Man, I really like this issue. They're definitely, they're improving. They're figuring out the EC formula every issue. The art's getting way better, man. Johnny Craig is getting good. And it's a pleasant surprise to see that Alton guy, John Alton. I kind of want to read more of his stuff. I just love how pleasing to the eye that simple art is due to his amazing storytelling. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.